2 in the chat if you're absolutely loving the fact that we get to be trained by so many amazing people every single week for free. I mean, not that they would ever charge you anyway, but how many people are in another industry where they get this kind of free mentorship from the people that are at the very, very apex of what they're doing? It's really cool that they're doing this for us. So thank you, corporate. Thank you, everyone that's been involved in this. I just got to talk to Carly a little bit, and she does so much work behind the scenes. So I want to acknowledge her as well. Now, I asked you guys before who is loving these calls, and it sounds like a lot of you. Here's another question. How many people are loving these calls, but don't actually remember that much after they're over? And you can be honest, it's okay. It happens to me all the time. Put a 3 in the chat if you get off these calls, you're like, that was the best call ever, and you text your upline or your sideline or someone in your downline or anyone, and you're like, I feel so good. And then within 3 hours, you have really no idea what the call was about anymore. Yeah, Pat, that's a great idea to take 2 action steps away from each call. That's why notes are incredible to make these calls a little bit more actionable. But I just want to let you guys know, it does happen to all of us. And so the cool thing is that one, that they're recorded, so you can always go back and listen. And I highly recommend listening to all of them because they've been amazing so far. But if you're trying to retain specific content that resonated with you, go back and at least give it a second listen. And more importantly, number 2, that's kind of how it goes, right? For all of us, we don't really remember what people said, but we always remember how they made us feel. And I think sometimes that feeling is enough. Because you plug yourself into things like this regularly, i.e. daily, that feeling is going to compound. And those good feelings, they start to show up in all areas of your life. So if you think about how you felt after last week's call or the week before that, or how you felt leaving Celebration or after seeing Tony Robbins or Brene Brown or whoever your favorite speaker might be, you feel so amazing right after, right? And so you want to ask yourself, what if that was your daily habit? What if every day you felt that level of inspiration or clarity or positivity or whatever it is that you're feeling? Wouldn't that start to bleed into everything you did? Wouldn't that start to bleed into how you show up? And wouldn't that start to bleed into you becoming that version of yourself all the time? Because if it's every Tuesday right now for you and that's it with these calls, that's amazing. And I commend you guys all again for being on here. It's a great place to start, but I really want to encourage you guys to make it a daily practice to plug into things like this or YouTube videos or podcasts or anything that puts you in a truly inspired state. Because honestly, guys, the more you do it, the more you become it. And so this whole call series is about strengthening your vision. And I just want to ask you guys again, how many people wake up every single day, every day, 7 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 52 weeks a year, with a super inspired vision? How many people after a long day of work and running the kids around everywhere and dealing with all the life stuff that may be going on are still super inspired to spend an hour or 2 every night touching their Isagenix business in some way? It's okay, guys, because I'm asking these questions because me too, right? It's not always the most inspired state all around me, right? I get sucked into the same things everybody else does. And most people I know, most of the top leaders in this company will tell you they don't wake up jumping out of bed excited to prospect all day. I just saw Lindsay Hufford comment in the chat. I know for a fact we talk, right? It's not, oh my God, 6 a.m. the alarm goes off and I just cannot wait to prospect today, right? So that's why we need to strengthen our vision every day and plug into things like this every single day. And I was on a call a few weeks back that was about being present to your life and what that looks like and what that means. And it was amazing and it was inspiring. And I think for a lot of people on that call, it did get the wheels turning a little bit, but that's just the start, right? You don't hear somebody talk about getting present to your life and then you just snap your fingers and all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm present forever and ever. I will be present now that I've heard it this one time, right? It's a practice. It's a daily practice because it has to be. And it's one that started for me about 8 years ago. Because before that, guys, you would have never found me on a call like this. I think I was generally a nice person. I wasn't some horrible human being, but I for sure would have had opinions about a call like this, about work like this. In fact, I did have opinions about work like this. And at the time, I thought I was living a really pretty good life already. I had gone back to school. I got my master's degree. I was working in the sports industry. My job was good. My salary was good. My life was good. And I assumed generally that people that plugged into things like this and hung out in the self-help section of the bookstore were just these, poor, broken souls. And I didn't need that stuff because I was good, right? And my sister was building this Isagenix thing. And again, I wasn't running around bashing it necessarily, but I didn't really get it. And I didn't really think people made that much money doing this. And then she would be like, oh, no, no, no. You don't know these people that I know that are making, $47 billion every year. But I know this is a corporate call, compliance alert. There's no one making $47 billion a year in our company. Just need to put that out there. But there are people that are making, seven figures. We see them on stage, and she knew them, and she obviously at some point became one of them. And I was like, yeah, but I don't care about like your strange friends. Like I don't know these people, and this is not anything that's going to be in my future. But then she herself started making pretty good money, and I started believing in her business a little bit more, and to the point where I would give her referrals and I would cheer her on. And I still wasn't really interested in building it myself because again, I didn't need the help. I was good. But CG's business took off to a whole new level, comparable to those strange women she was telling me about. And I watched her go from 0 to 100. And that was all I needed to dive in. And my life has truly, truly never been the same. And so here we are 8.5 years later. I am all in. I've been with Isagenix, like I said, 8.5 years. I've been full time about 8 years or so. I've had the privilege to see this company in all of its forms and everything that's the highs and the lows and the excitement and the new product launches and everything else over the last 8.5 years. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, you guys. And I commend everyone who has been around for any amount of time that's still plugging in, that's still all in, because the amount of people that come and go, you just wonder, oh my God, I wonder if they just stuck it out a little bit longer, where they'd be right now. But anyway, I went all in 2014, but I will be fully honest with you guys that my all in, I was still kind of a tough sell. I was about 2 months into my build. And again, I really was, I was all in. But CG brought me to this coaching event. It wasn't an Isagenix corporate sponsored event. It was just like a personal development coaching event. And everyone was hugging each other and they were saying hello and doing like normal things. But I went there with a friend of mine who had been building with CG for a little bit longer than I had. And I said to her, and I quote, I was like, I don't really need to be friends with these people. I already have my own friends. It's like, I just want to know how to sell the shakes. And she was like, ooh, she's like, that's not what's going to be happening here today. This is going to be a different kind of event. And then I went to my first company convention, Celebration 2014, where they do teach you there, if you can, how to sell the shakes. And I still wasn't like all that on board, because I walked in, I saw all these people, they were high-fiving each other, and they were standing on the chairs and dancing and wearing Isagenix shirts. And I said to that same friend, I was like, oh my God, that they're wearing the t-shirts. We're like a sports team or something. Like, what are we doing here? Guys, but I heard speakers at that event that were not just telling me how to sell shakes, which was, again, for me, the most important thing in that moment. They were telling me, compensation plan, all the things that are tangible, tactical things that we can use. But they were telling me other stuff too. And it wasn't like the empty, like, just go chase your dreams, you're worth it. They were talking about life, and they were talking about, in my estimation, my life. And they were talking about other people in my life. And I obviously never met any of these people. And I heard person after person sharing things that again, to go back to what we're talking about before, I've mostly forgotten at this point, if I'm being honest. But I remember like yesterday how I felt sitting in those seats. I remember having tears in my eyes at the end of my first day of celebration. And I'm like an emotional-ish kind of guy. Like, I'm not dead inside, but I don't cry at a lot of our events, I'll be honest. But I felt so alive. It was the first time in my life. I vividly remember sitting in the seats, and I turned to my friend Katie, and I was like, something just feels different today. Like, something feels like it changed here in these seats today. And my vision was crystal freaking clear at this point. Now, I know if you've been to an event before, or you've been on a really great call before, you felt that way before, right? Where you've got this fire, it's just pulsing through your veins, and you've got these butterflies in your stomach, and it's this really explainable feeling, right? Put a 4 in the chat if you've ever felt that way building your Isagenix business, even one time, right? Leaving an event or leaving a call or whatever it is, you're just so hyped up, you don't even know what to do with the energy you have about it. Yeah, a lot of force. So Simon Sinek, who I love, He talks about that feeling in one of his longer videos. Does anybody listen to Simon Sinek? A couple hands. Okay, cool. I love that guy. And to go back to what we were talking about before, it's not even necessarily what he says. It's his delivery, right? Every once in a while, I just play one of his videos on YouTube on the way to the gym, and I just listen to it. And for me, it's like the best pre-workout there is, because he just delivers his message with such fire that it inspires some kind of fire in me. I can't explain it, but he talked about that feeling. He talked about nervousness versus excitement. And you may be familiar with this if you guys watch him or listen to him or read him. I know that's very old school. I don't read anymore, but I do all my learning via listening, but he does have books. But he talks about when you're nervous, what happens? You visualize the future, your heart starts to race, and your hands get clammy, right? And then he talks about excitement, and what are the stimulus of that? It's the same thing. You visualize the future, your heart races, and your hands get a little bit clammy, right? Physiologically, he talks about it's almost the same exact feeling in your body. The difference is the story we tell ourselves about what we're visualizing. And he goes on to explain, there's a whole thing that I'm not going to get into, but he goes on to explain that the most successful people in the world have mastered the art of telling them the empowering version of the story. And that right now is the basis of what I want to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so, the empowering version of the story, because the story you tell yourself is gonna strengthen your vision day after day. Okay. Let me ask you guys a question. And this is an exercise we did over the summer with on a smaller team call. But who here, who thinks moving is stressful? And it's okay if you do. I'm not here to shame anybody. If moving is stressful, put up 5 in the chat. I don't know what number we're on anymore. If moving is just one of those events that you're just like, oh, I don't want to do it. The thought of packing up and moving across the country or even across the street could stress a lot of people out. I know a lot of people have that story. What about like travel days? Who here finds travel days a little bit stressful? Put a 6 in the chat if that's you. The idea of getting to the airport and setting your alarm the night before and going through security, and maybe you have a connection. If that whole idea of traveling stresses you out, 6 in the chat. Cool. Exciting stress for sure. All right, and now what about last one? What about brushing your teeth? Who here gets stressed out by the thought of brushing their teeth? 7 in the chat if that's you. All right, Ashley. Okay, we can dive into that in a little bit. Not a lot of 7s. Ashley is the only one, and I'm sure there's something there that I'm probably not qualified to talk about. But the idea here is that if you're brushing your teeth at, I don't know, it's 2 in the morning and the doorbell rings and you're in your underwear and the dogs are barking and your baby wakes up crying, right? In that scenario, I bet we'd have a lot more 7s, right? In that scenario, I think a lot more people, they would be very stressed out in the moment of brushing their teeth. And so my point is, not a lot of people had a story about brushing their teeth that's stressful, but they agree that it can be stressful in a certain context, right? But so many people, by your own admissions in the chat, have a story already that traveling or moving is stressful without me even creating the stressful context around it, right? There's a story there that you're bringing to moving or traveling that it's not empowering, right? You're visualizing the situation and it stresses you out, even though nothing stressful has actually happened yet. You've got some past trauma from a nightmare travel day or an awful move or whatever that's created a story that you now carry with you in those situations. And you might be sitting here saying, no, it's not a story, Todd. Like I have all this evidence to back up my story. I was stranded at an airport, or the movers broke all my stuff, or they didn't show up on time. And guys, I get it. I've been there, right? We've all been there. I've had flights that have been delayed, or I've been diverted to random cities, and I slept on the airport because they canceled the last flight out that night, and you have to stay there overnight because they're not paying for a hotel. Whatever it is, I'm sure most people have those experiences. Most people probably have multiple of those experiences. But I've also had plenty of travel days, guys, that went pretty smoothly. I got to the airport, I boarded the plane, I got to where I was going, and I went about my life. And I think a lot of people here have had a lot of those days too. And if I'm being honest, I've had way more of those days than I have where I slept on the floor of the airport, right? So I use those times as evidence that traveling isn't stressful, right? That's my evidence. And I know these are going to sound like silly examples, but we're going to bring it back to Isagenix soon. You may be thinking, right? Like, I don't travel that much. I have 3 kids, and we don't travel to Australia all that much, where I can really be stressed out about it. But the next time I do, sure, I'll change my story. Or I haven't moved in 10 years, but if I move again anytime soon, thank you for that eye-opening experience that I can change my story. But here's the point, right? We're presented with situations every single day where we get to choose our evidence, right? Are we going to use the evidence that most of the time traveling has been fine, and when we have a story that traveling is easy? Or are we going to lean into the evidence that traveling has been hard a few times, and therefore we have a story that is stressful? And most people choose to create the story using their negative evidence. And so if you're doing that within your Isagenix business, that's why you might be struggling with your vision. And so I want to ask you guys to identify, you don't have to put them in the chat, you can either just think about them or write them down. How often are you finding evidence to justify a position you've taken about yourself or your life or your business? And again, you don't have to type in the chat, but just start thinking about it. I'm gonna give you some examples here. How many people here think it's hard to make friends as a grown-up? That's something I hear a lot, which obviously makes it more challenging. We're all grown-ups here, to build an Isagenix business. I've heard a lot of people say that. I'm not good at meeting new people, right? And maybe there have been times you've struggled, guys. I don't doubt that. I've been there, right? I lived in Santa Monica for 3 months, 2016 or 17. And guys, I made no friends. In fact, I made so few friends that I moved, and nobody knows. I moved down to San Diego. But in those 3 months, I had 0 friends in Santa Monica. I had a nice time. Your worst day in Santa Monica, still not a bad day. But I didn't come up with this story that it's hard to make friends as a grown-up. That never became my story as a result of that experience, because I had all this other evidence that I can make friends. I've made plenty of friends throughout my life. Every single person on this call has made friends, right? Every single person on this call has relationships in their life that they weren't born with, right? What if you thought about every single person you have in your life, every single friend you've ever made in your life, from grade school all the way up until now, right? If you're married, maybe take a look at who was invited to your wedding, who came to your wedding. Use that as evidence to say, Tim, you know what? I'm actually kind of good at this, right? How would that story impact how you feel about building your business, or how you feel about your skill set of meeting new people, right? Or maybe you have this story of, I'm not good at social media, right? And that, for most businesses, but especially Isagenix, is a really big part of it, right? But the empowered version of that story could be, look at all these other things I've learned. I learned how to be a mom. I learned how to do the job I have now that I had no experience in when I started, right? Everyone on this call, you learned the freaking English language. It only took you a couple of years, right? It's like the hardest language. I don't know that to be true. It's a hard language, though. Guys, you can learn social media if you can learn the English language, okay? So doesn't using that evidence of the things that you have learned in the past provide for a better story about your ability to learn social media? And that better story provides for a stronger vision, right? Some people may have a story that that parenting is really hard. And guys, I always say this when we talk about parenting and things that I've never experienced on these calls. I have never been a parent. One day, I'm sure it's really hard. And Jake is my fiance. In the next couple of years, I'm sure we're going to learn firsthand that it's even harder than we can even imagine. But there are people I'm inspired by as we start planning for that next phase. And the people with the really empowered stories about parenting include my sister Jamie, who I don't know if she's on here now, but nobody's parenting story inspires me more than hers. And here's another contrast. So she's got 2 kids, my nieces, of course, and they're amazing. They're truly amazing kids, but they're also normal. I think I hope she's not on here right now. I think they're 8 and 5 or 9 and 6, something like that. And they're just their age. They have crying fits and meltdowns and all the things you get from kids of a certain age, right? And she takes them everywhere. Everywhere. They have more passport stamps than most grown-ups I know. And then we have another family who has 2 kids who are, I think, just about the exact same age. And her story is she can't go to the grocery store with the 2 of them at the same time. It's too much, okay? And they're great kids. I know these kids. I hung out with these kids. I see them at all the holidays. They're great kids. And so when Jamie is in Barcelona and one of her kids has a meltdown about whatever it is that causes the meltdown, right? Jamie's story isn't, this is why I shouldn't travel with kids, right? It's, at least I'm in Barcelona while this is happening instead of the grocery store, right? That's the empowered version of the story. And again, I'm not giving you parenting advice or pretending to be an expert or anything of that nature, because I'm clearly not. But I want to remind you have a choice to always choose to believe the empowered version of whatever story you're telling yourself, or the disempowered version of it. And I want you guys to start getting really present to when and where you're choosing the disempowered one. I shared the story this summer. I started coaching classes at a gym twice a week. I'm having the best time with it, by the way. Highly recommend paid networking. But a few months ago, I walked in. I saw one of the managers on a Monday morning, and she had just gotten back from a trip. I think she was in San Diego, and I was like, "Oh my God, how was your trip?" And she immediately went into all the issues the gym had while she was gone or was having that morning, and the sound system wasn't working, and something about the computer system. I honestly, I don't remember it all. But she finished her thought, and I remember this part. She said, the moral of the story is I just can't take vacations or things like this happen. And I was, first of all, I don't know why you share this with your part-time employee, but beyond that, I was like, or we could look at this and we could say, damn, I was away all weekend and the gym basically ran itself. The classes ran smoothly and the clients had great workouts. And how cool is it that I have this business that can essentially function without me, right? That I built this thing into a thing that I actually can go away. And like, I'm sure the sound system was probably going to break anyway. If it was broken on Monday morning, it's going to break on Tuesday if it didn't, right? But anyway, she wasn't necessarily in the mood for me to mansplain away all the things that I thought in my head at that moment, which is fair. And this is not about ragging on her. It's that we all, right? Because she's a perfectly pleasant human being. We all have these moments in our days and our weeks where we get to that point. We've all heard somebody say, "Oh, just another Monday," right? And it's this disempowered version of whatever's going on. And I say that because I know, right? Everyone you've heard on these Tuesday mornings, just because we're on these training calls doesn't mean we don't have moments of disempowerment. It happens to everyone. But when you do the work, and we talked about it earlier, when you do it almost or hopefully more than daily, right? Those moments remain moments, right? The moments where you feel disempowered stay moments, and you're able to zoom out, recognize it, and you start to tell a different story. So as far as disempowering story goes, here's one that you guys might be telling yourselves about your business without even realizing that it's a disempowering story. But I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot. Okay, it's when you justify the success that other people are having, right? And here's what that sounds like. It's, of course, Zach and Eden are successful. There's two of them, twice the output. All right. If I had somebody doing this with me, if I was married to someone building an Isagenix business, I would be crushing it too. Right. But then you talk about my sister CG and you say, oh my God, of course she's successful, right? She's single, she's childless, she doesn't have distractions that I have. If I were single and I didn't have the kids to take care of all day, I could be out there crushing it too. And you hear Audrey and James, of course they're successful. No duh. They have a toddler. He's adorable. He's social. All they got to do is go to the park. Being a parent is the easiest way to meet people. If I had a kid, I would be meeting all the other parents too, right? Guys, do you see what I'm doing here, right? And this goes way beyond building a business because there's so many ways to justify other people's success that doesn't have to do with your business, right? Jake and I had a girl in our life tell us not that long ago. She was like, the only reason she's like, you guys have made your friends in Nashville because you guys have each other. She's like, it's a lot easier for two people than, I'm single and I can't make friends as easily. And I was like, oh, okay. I met him 2 years ago. Do you think I just had no friends for 35 years of my life? And she was like, oh yeah, well, all right. And she came up with another reason why it's harder for her and easier for other people. And guys, we all have moments where we feel that way. And so I'm only going to say this once. I might actually say it twice. Making excuses for other people's success is the quickest way to disempower yourself from having your own. Okay, I will say that again. Making excuses for other people's success is the quickest way to disempower yourself from having your own. Okay, when I started my Isagenix business, I looked around. There weren't a lot of guys building this thing, and there certainly weren't a lot of guys who were doing it without a wife involved or without a partner involved, right? Not a lot of single guys walking across the stage, right? And then 2 months later, I came out of the closet, and as few single guys as there were even fewer gay guys walking across the stage collecting big checks. And it would have been really easy for me to use that as evidence that this was going to be harder for me in some way. Right? Pretty blonde girls, check, right? Hardworking couples all over the place. Single gay guys, there must be a reason. It must be harder for me, right? But again, that wasn't my story. And partially that is thanks to my sister, because on the day that I came out of the closet, actually, you know what? In the moment I came out of the closet to her, I remember we were on the phone and she was actually on an Isagenix trip. I think she was in St. Martin or somewhere down there. And the conversation was something like this. I told her that I was gay, and she said, and I quote, "Oh my gosh," she's like, "Are you serious right now? Because that is so cool. I don't have a lot of gay friends. And do you even know what this could mean for your Isagenix business? It is an untapped market." Okay, now, was that the perfect reaction? I honestly, I don't know that there is one, but was it an empowered reaction? Hell yeah. Okay, and because I was surrounded by people like her who did think in empowering terms, right, it never occurred to me that this would be a detriment to my business. It never occurred to me that this would be harder. If anything, she made it sound like this would be way easier for me. Okay, and the same goes for everyone here. Okay, it also never occurred to me that I should take a step back from my business because I had a lot going on personally, right? For those of you who have never come out of the closet, take my word for it, you have a lot going on, right? As I'm sure you all have a lot going on in whatever situations you're in, right? Plus, I was going through some sort of breakup. It wasn't like a real breakup. It's like a moment of heartbreak. And you guys can all, I'm sure, relate to that in some level. You had this giant layer of the coming out, and it was a lot. And I don't think anyone would have faulted me, including my sister, for being like, listen, I can't focus on selling shakes right now. I can't focus on building a team right now. Right. I've got all these emotions going on. I need to take time. I gotta figure myself out. But the empowering version of the story for me was I got into this business for a reason, and that was to accomplish this dream I had of retiring from my 9 to 5 job by the time I was 30. And I feel way better about myself and the world around me when I'm working towards a goal that I'm this passionate about and surrounded by empowered, like minded people than I do when I'm laying on the couch and putting all those things off. And so maybe, just maybe, if I continue to operate from that empowered space, that'll serve the whole finding myself project in a totally leveled up kind of way. Okay, so if you're going through it right now, maybe work sucks or your marriage isn't great or money, your kids, or something out there is stressing you out like crazy. And I'm sure most of you have something, right? I'm not going to fault you for feeling it and for even wanting to pull yourself up and retreating from your friends or retreating from your business or retreating from the gym and just taking your time, okay? Because you might need it, okay? But I am going to offer you another perspective. And here it is. I don't know a lot of people who solved their relationship problems or solved their money problems or solved their work problems or ever found themselves by laying around doing nothing, okay? By retreating from anything that inspires them, okay? And definitely not by laying around and watching TV, okay? And that's what happens a lot of times, right? If you don't fill your time with something, something else is going to fill that time. And usually it's TV, it's scrolling on your phone, whatever it is. And guys, I'm as guilty as anyone for getting distracted and wanting to check out for 30 minutes or longer. And this is not a lecture on why TV is evil. Okay, sometimes it's fun and necessary. And we watch, I think, 9 hours of football on Sunday. Okay, touched my business very little on Sundays. Most anyone on my team will tell you I don't really respond the quickest on Sundays. But I'm offering you this to bring it full circle from the beginning that if you consciously and intentionally filled your time with things that inspire you, and again, rarely is TV going to be the thing that inspires you, especially if you're a football fan, because usually you're stressed out for the entirety of the game. Okay. You could probably handle a lot of these tougher moments from a more inspired state and create a more inspired story. And so I promised Carly I was going to be close to 30 minutes here, but it's going to go a little bit longer, but we are running low on time. So I think it's valuable as I end this call to not only have training that hopefully got you thinking a little bit and really truly hope that some of it did, but also leave you with some tangible things that you can take with you and specifically work with going forward. And a lot of them are things that I focus on outside of Isagenix. And we all know though that our real lives and our Isagenix lives they're so intertwined, right? Like you go to the dog park just to get the dog exercise, but you end up sending somebody a cart link for college, and or you create this empowering story about your travel day, and all of a sudden you're doing reach outs on the plane, right? Like your real life and your Isagenix life kind of are just one and the same. And so I want to leave you with some of the inspiring stories that I carry with me on a larger scale. And so, guys, there's a lot of very specific situations where you're just going to have to choose empowered or disempowered version of the story. But I think, at least for me, I have some overarching stories that act as, I'll call them my guiding principles that I take with me and that I thought I would share with you. And so my first one, and I say this a lot, my sister probably gets sick of it. I know Jake gets sick of it. But nothing bad ever happens to me is the story. You guys can write this one down. Nothing bad ever happens to me. It's a story I tell myself all the time. And just to be clear, and I don't think I need to clarify this, but I will. While I'm very grateful for the life that I have, okay, it's not like it's touched by angels from sun up to sundown. Okay, I deal with the same stuff that most people do: work stuff, relationship stuff, social stuff, financial stuff, traffic, politics, all the things, right? So I'm not immune to that. I'm not saying those things don't happen to me. But the story I tell myself, and you can take it or leave it, is that bad things don't happen to me. So let me give you a quick example. A couple of years ago, it was actually the day I met Jake on my trip. I was on our cross country road trip when I met him. And it was a few hours before I got to where he was, and we would sort of accidentally meet. I was pulled over for what I am maintaining to this day was a BS ticket. And I won't go into all of the details, but it was garbage. And I obviously have a ways to go with my radical responsibility, but that's why I'm not training on that today. So anyway, I got pulled over and I'm going back and forth with the cop, and he's like, "Do you know why?" And I said, "No, I have no idea." Which again, I know it sounds cliche, but I had no idea because I wasn't speeding. I didn't have like a tail light out. And so he told me why he pulled me over, and I still disagree. But anyway, so he goes back, writes up the ticket, he brings it back to me, and it's almost $400. So again, after a lot of back and forth, I was always polite. I have a lot of questions. None of it mattered. Obviously, he goes back to his car, he drives away, and I'm staring at this $400 ticket that I just do not support. And honestly, even if I did support it, I still would have hated it. But I felt so right, So the confusion about the ticket turned into annoyance, it turned into anger. I'm starting to like feel it bubbling up inside me, right? And I'm like, oh, I have to change the story about this BS ticket. And so I remind myself, nothing bad ever happens to me. Nothing bad ever happens to me. Okay. And the only way I can convince myself that this isn't bad, because it seems pretty open and shut, it sucks, right? I don't want this ticket. It's really hard to convince myself it's a good thing. But what I told myself is that by the cop pulling me over, I avoided a really terrible car accident down the road. Because you hear about people that are in accidents and they get hit going through a red light, and you're saying, man, if they were only 5 minutes earlier, 5 minutes later, they could have avoided that whole situation, right? We never really, I don't often stop to think about all the times that we did leave 5 minutes earlier, we did leave 5 minutes late, and we did avoid that situation because we would never know, right? And so I have no idea how many accidents I might have avoided by being 5 minutes late or 5 minutes early. And so I was choosing in that moment, I still choose to believe now, that being pulled over for those 5 minutes allowed me to avoid some idiot switching lanes without seeing me, being on a cell phone or whatever. And I can't prove that. I can't prove it either way. Okay, but that story moved me from frustration about this stupid ticket to gratitude. So why not tell that story? Okay, that nothing bad ever happens to me. So just keep that in your tool belt. I have two more that I carry with me. Sometimes, guys, not having an opinion is cool. Okay, this is a really empowering story that I always try to remind myself. It's a big one. I pride myself on being a thoughtful and deep thinker and well-informed and all of that. But sometimes there are things that come up in the world that I just don't need an opinion on. And I know that sounds crazy in these times. But sometimes it's just cooler not to have an opinion, to not know how you feel on it. Okay, I know this is a newsflash, and I know people are going to like it, but the world probably isn't demanding your opinions on Russia or the cost of gas or the current president or the former president or COVID or whatever, right? It's just not. And to be clear on some of these things, I have very clear and strong opinions, okay? But there have been a couple things in the news lately that I read up on, and I assess my own values, and I come up with the answer of, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of gray, a lot of nuance. And because the world isn't demanding that I come up with an opinion, I don't actually need to settle on one. I can just move on with my life and then stay in the information gathering stage and just be there. And that's okay. And because here's another reminder that, guys, you've been wrong before. You've been really wrong before. We've all been wrong before. Okay. We've been wrong about relationships we were in that we thought were great that turned out to be not. We've been wrong about certain friends we had in our lives that are not currently in them anymore. We've been wrong about careers that we thought were going to be forever. And 3 years in, we find Isagenix, right? We've been wrong about a lot of big stuff and a lot of little stuff. So there's a pretty good chance you're super wrong about some of these things happening in the world that you feel so right about right now. So stay open to that possibility. Let go of your need to be the smartest person in the room or the smartest person on Facebook. And just understand, I haven't met a lot of happy radicals in my life. I just haven't. Okay. So I endeavor not to be one. And so I can step back and say, you know what? I don't need to have an opinion on everything. And that story for me, it gives me a ton of peace. So I encourage you to put that one in your toolbox. Again, I'm really going to try and wrap up the next 3 minutes here. Empowering story number 3, you're not busy, you're a grown-up. I know these are starting to sound a little feisty now, but I swear I say this to myself in an empowering way. I just remind myself that being a grown-up is multifaceted, right? And part of that is having competing responsibilities and obligations, and that busy is just a little bit of a victim word and a victim state. So, right, like you can be busy in a moment, absolutely. If somebody wanted to hang out with me at, say, 10 o'clock Central Time today, I'm busy. I am on this call with you guys, right? Actually, 9:30 Central Time. I can't, right? The answer is no, I'm busy. Okay. But if someone says they want to get together for coffee for an hour next weekend or next week, and I'm too busy for that, now it starts to feel to me less about being busy and more about that person not necessarily being a priority for me next week. Because if I got a phone call from a family member telling me that they had a week to live or whatever, I would clearly, hopefully, be able to carve out an hour for them next week at some point, right? Probably a lot more. And so that's because that person suddenly becomes a priority. And now I get, guys, you can't prioritize everything and everyone as if someone's about to die, because you just can't do that. You don't need to tell people to their face that they're not a priority, but by getting honest with yourself about what the situation really is, that takes you away from this whole victiming, like I'm just so busy story. Because when people say that, they really believe it, right? When people say they don't have time for the gym, or you know, they don't have time for their bit, you really start to believe it. You really believe it. Jake and I had this chat a while back about our wedding invitations. Somebody asked us if we ever planned on sending them, because I think we were far behind the actual regular timeline of sending invitations out. And he was like, "Oh, we're just so busy with like work and travel and all these other things." And I chose my words really carefully in the moment, but just quickly now, my essential message was, we're actually, you know, we're not that busy. Like we work and we travel, we have social things, but the truth, we just haven't prioritized it. If we wanted to lick the envelopes and stick up labels on them, we can put them in the mail tonight, and you guys could have them by next week. Because every person I know that's gotten married also had work and also traveled and also had social obligations, and somehow they managed to send out their envelopes, right? And I don't say these things in a shaming way. I say them hopefully for you guys to understand. I was trying to empower myself and Jake that if they can do it, so can we. Right? I would rather put the onus on me than my busy schedule, because I don't want to live in a world that's too busy for me to keep up with, right? And the story I tell myself dictates whether or not that's the world I live in. Does that make sense? Okay, I swear, last one. This is gonna be 60 seconds left, I promise, Carly. Last empowering story. These are the good old days. And guys, I know it sounds like I jacked that straight from like a Hallmark movie, probably multiple. But I don't care, guys. It's something I remind myself all the time, that there was a time in my life where I wish to be exactly where I am right now. And there's going to be a time in my life where I miss exactly where I am right now. Right? And I promise the same for all of you. Even if right now feels like a struggle, and again, we talked about this, everyone has things that feel like a struggle. Remind yourself that there was a time, right, that you'd be thrilled to have what you have right now. 10 years ago, Todd would have been out of his mind excited if you told him he would be living in Nashville with an incredible fiance, 3 amazing dogs, technically 3.5 because we're fostering a 4th right now, planning a wedding in Mexico, out of the 9-to-5 workforce completely. I would have signed up for this life immediately if you had offered that to me 10 years ago. And a few years from now, when hopefully we've got screaming babies, well, hopefully they're not screaming, but they will be, I'm sure, because that's what babies do, right? And our money is being spent on things like diapers and preschool as opposed to happy hour and travel. As grateful as I'll be for that moment, I'm absolutely going to miss these days I'm in right now, right? And we'll say, oh my God, our problems were so much simpler back then, right? How many people said that? It was just us. We didn't have to keep these tiny humans alive, right? Anyone ever heard that or thought that? It doesn't have to be about tiny humans, obviously. You can be looking back at your college years, right? You come up, an old photo comes up on your thing. You're, oh my God, life was so easy back then. You're going to look back on these years right now and think the same thing. So again, I know it might sound cheesy, but reminding yourself over and over and over and over that these are the good old days is a really powerful reminder that whatever you're dealing with right now isn't going to seem so serious down the road. And probably you'll be downright nostalgic for whatever time in your life you're having right now. And that is it. 40 minutes, slightly over what I promised you, Carly. But I appreciate you guys all getting on here. Have an amazing, amazing holiday this week. Have an amazing weekend. And we just appreciate you guys hopping on these calls every Tuesday. And we'll see you next week. I don't know who's speaking, but I'm sure it's somebody amazing. So thanks so much.